Hello and welcome to Super Insider, a podcast proudly brought to you by Australian Retirement Trust on all things investing, the economy, and now it would appear technology and artificial intelligence. Hello, everybody. I'm your host. My name is Anne Fuchs, and I'm so thrilled to have some really, really cool people on the show today. We're going to be talking about how you can make AI work for you, for your life, for your finances. Before we do that, of course, just remember that this is general advice, general information only, so you'll need to make sure if this is right for you. Now, let me do some introductions, if I might. Dr. Nici Sweaney, founder of AI Her Way, all about ethical AI platform and an absolute expert in the subject. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Elicia McDonald, a partner at Airtree Venture Capital, very fancy. Welcome, and proudly supported by Art as well.
Great to be here. Thanks, Anne.
And these spectacular women have flown in to the studio today here in Brisbane. So we're really appreciative to have a big conversation about how we can feel empowered. It is the month of International Women's Day. So yes, we are going to show a big bias towards the sisterhood and empowering women all around this country. Now, let's start with a bit of your stories, if that's okay. So venture capital, maybe we'll start with you, Elicia, if that's all right, and then we'll go to you, Nici.
Sure. So as Anne mentioned, I'm a venture capitalist at Airtree Ventures. We're an early and growth stage venture fund. We've invested in 115 portfolio companies across all sectors, but primarily software. And we're talking a lot about artificial intelligence today, and it's a theme that we've been investing in for a very long time. And there's been this incredible change in the landscape over the last 24 months in particular. So really excited to get stuck into that and some practical applications around particularly what some of our women founders are doing in that space. My personal journey, I've been with Airtree for now 9 years. Airtree's been around for 10, 11 years this year. So I've been there for most of the journey and have really seen the growth in the local technology sector and the local venture capital sector in that time. So really excited to share some of those stories.
Very cool.
Awesome. So I'm Dr. Nici Sweaney. I came into AI through my PhD. So I spent 17 years in academia and I studied, of all things, conservation ecology as a PhD student. I actually researched butterflies, which does not immediately scream artificial intelligence, but I had to learn how to code during my PhD. And somebody at dinner about 10 years ago overheard that I could code and then hired me as a consulting data analyst. So I spent 10 years doing that. Generative AI came onto the scene, and not being new to algorithms or data, but definitely with generative AI being new, I had this moment of, holy crap, this is going to change humanity for all eternity. And so I started talking about generative AI back in November of 2022. That got me invited on some roundtables to participate. And then about 6 months after doing that, I had this moment. So I've got 4 kids, as I know we all do.
No, I'm 3.
You're
almost
3.5. We all have an insane amount of humans living underneath our roof.
Yes.
So I had this moment putting my then 2-year-old youngest to bed one night and thinking through, academia and research and the data scientist stuff I was doing and speaking at conferences about AI. And I thought, well, what do I want to do with this? Where do I want to go? And I just had this light bulb moment of thinking, if anyone needs AI, it's women. So that started AI Her Way. And we're almost 2 years old now, and we're a full-scale consultancy. So we go into businesses and organizations and we help them implement AI. And I do lots of PD and lots of speaking events, but we've worked with over 60 partners around Australia and also globally.
Well, I think 2030 AI will equate to, I think it's $16 trillion to the global economy or thereabouts. But women only make up about a quarter or just under a quarter of the workforce, but there will be about close to 250,000 jobs in Australia by 2030. And you two women have a really massive role in terms of actually closing that gap. And also probably there has to be a bias. Let's talk about actually just what AI is and kind of the construct. It is intimidating for people. People think about robots, around misuse of information, ethics. Maybe can we just break down what it is, and maybe Nici, it'd be great to start there and talk about then how it applies in terms of companies, if that's all right, Elicia.
Yeah. So I think the first thing to note with AI is most often these days when people say AI, they actually mean generative AI. So that's a slight difference. AI has been around for decades. When we think about using things like Spotify or Netflix, they're based on AI and algorithms that say, okay, you've watched all of the Real Housewives of New York, so you might like the Real Housewives of Sydney to watch next. So they're using algorithms to make predictions about people's behavior. The difference with generative AI is that it generates new content. So if you think about the same analogy, it's like, okay, she's watched all of Real Housewives of New York. Now here's a completely new show that we've made just for her with AI-generated characters that we've never seen before on a script that has never existed before. So generative AI is the new thing, and it's the thing that we've become really excited about. And most of our generative AI programs are based on models of large language models. So these are your tools like ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and Meta and
Copilot?
yes, but they're powered by OpenAI, so they are modeled off ChatGPT as well. And the way that I explain how these things work, we've all got children. So imagine you've got a kind of 10-month-old at home and you've got a pet dog. Let's say its name's Max. You're constantly talking to your baby about Max. You're saying, oh, let's pat Max. Let's take Max for a walk. Or Max, stop barking in the backyard, right? And in humans' brains, over time, with this repeated exposure, we start to learn that that thing's Max and it's a dog. But because humans are really clever at pattern recognition, we start to recognize that when we walk past other fluffy four-legged things, they might also be a dog as well. So humans' brains start to form this map of what a dog is and all the things related to a dog. And then when the baby finally says the word Max or barks out loud, we congratulate it as parents, right? So we go, oh, you're the most advanced baby ever, much better than Shelley's baby next door. You're very, very clever. And what that does in humans' brains, that gives us a dopamine hit and it helps us kind of lock down and learn that concept. Now, what machine learning and people in the AI space have done is they've taught code to behave in the same sort of way. So we've taught that when we say something like dog to ChatGPT, it can grab all these bits of data and code about all the things related to a dog and it can give it back to us. And then we as users tell it if it got it right or not, and that helps it to learn what we want from it. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of how generative AI works, and why we're excited about it is because it has no use case. So, when we think about the Netflix algorithms, they're drawing from a pool of pre-existing shows. And yeah, that's cool, but there's nothing extra. People have got to go and make extra. When we talk about the potential of generative AI, it's that we have limitless things that it could do or create for us. It's up to us as users to decide what that means.
Which is what I think scares people. And so, Elicia, what are you seeing in terms of companies that are out there creating all this new stuff that Nici's talking about?
Yeah, so I think as a sort of technology turnaround, generative AI in particular, if you look back in time, we've seen similar waves with cloud and mobile adoption. And so where we are in sort of this technological stage with Gen AI is that a lot of the attention today has been on the foundational layer. So we're talking about the LLMs, like the ChatGPTs.
What's that LLM?
The large language models.
Thank you.
These are sort of the foundational layer where all the data's sitting and they're the models generating the outcomes. What comes next, what's the next stage in that evolution is the application layer. And that's where we've started to see the early beginnings of companies, but we're still very much at the beginning of that journey. So if you think about the mobile evolution as a comparison point, it took 4 years to go from when the mobile trend started to when we got Uber. So the first iteration of what an application layer looked like for the mobile generation was the Torch app on our phone, the calculator app on our phone. It's just scratching the surface of what's possible. And then you get to Uber and sort of how much that changed our experience in terms of how we get around a city. That's what's really exciting when we look at companies now in Gen AI is that we're just scratching the surface around the application layer. And so if you think about the potential applications when you think about generating content in the way that we've never been able to do before and the potential applications across all industries, that's what we're really excited about.
So what would be your advice to our female viewers around this opportunity to advance their own career or make their life better?
I would just say that this is transformative. It's going to transform both our lives, but also our working lives.
Yes.
And from a professional perspective, every task you do today, you should be thinking about how can AI help me do this? And so I've heard of people literally having that sticky note on their desk. How can AI help me do this? And the first couple of times you dabble and you start to use these tools, it feels really foreign, and I think it's just experimenting. If you think about your first interaction with ChatGPT, and some people listening may never have used ChatGPT yet, you start using it off a bit like Google. You might ask it a question, expect an answer. And as you start to learn better prompts and ways that it can support you, you can get more sophisticated. Plus the technology is constantly improving. And so giving it additional context. So you've got a challenge, maybe a strategic challenge you're facing in your work. This is the challenge I'm facing. Here's the context. This is your role. You might say, you're an expert, you're an investment banker with this many years experience, with detailed experience in this industry. ask me 5 additional questions to learn additional context to help me with this challenge, and then come up with 3 unique ideas for how I could solve this, and actually using it as a thought partner. That's sort of the evolution that people go through. And so I think just dipping your toes in the water and starting to think about how it can help you is sort of that first step. And then there's obviously, much more you can do beyond there.
So what are your thoughts, Nici? Because what I'm thinking about is, what if it feeds you the wrong information? But before we go to that, maybe the career elements and where you see it can really advance women's career.
I think, Elicia, that was great advice about how to start using it, and to remember that it's much less like Google and more like hiring an intern. I actually often describe it as an intern mixed with an overfed Labrador, because it's always pretty hungry for treats. But so thinking about it like, how would you onboard somebody new to help you? And that could be in your life as well. But I think for women, I particularly think it's very important for women, because we're at this point in our society where, we just had the Workplace Gender Equality Agency release their report. We have a gender pay gap. Women are doing $650 billion worth of unpaid labour in the Australian economy.
I think it's the equivalent of 44 extra days a year we have to work to earn the same amount of money as men, according to the ABS. Yes.
And there was some other stats around women spending more than half of their time in unpaid labour versus men that spend more than half the time in paid labour. Right. Now, for me, that is very rare that is your unique genius, right? Like, I did a PhD in conservation ecology. My PhD was not in how to pick out birthday presents for my 10-year-old's friend, right? That's in very few people's zone of genius. And so I see the real potential for AI for women in particular is to offload some of that mental load. And that can be in your personal life as well as your professional life. If I could gift everyone, a wife, as Anna Crabtree says, I could have every wife should have a wife. We don't necessarily have the resources for that, but we do have AI, and I see that as being a big moment of being able to close a gender gap for women.
Practically, though, what are you talking about there in terms of what are the tools? What are the practical kind of tools that women with 3.5 and 4 children are using in your lives with full careers and full family lives?
Well, I think the overwhelm is real. So there's about 31,500 generative AI tools on the market, and that stops people from starting because they don't know what's worthwhile. Most of them are all based on this foundation of a large language model. So I always tell people the best place to start is just with one of those. And I usually say either ChatGPT or Claude, because they both kind of test comparatively in terms of creativity and intelligence testing. And how you can start is, just say, hey, I'm Nici. I'm, a 38-year-old Australian with 4 kids. I am an AI strategist. We're working in these sorts of projects. I've got this kind of stuff going on at home. What are 10 ways that you could help me offload some of this work? And just work with these tools, right? They've got so much data in them. You actually don't really need to know how to use them. You just need to give it context and ask these tools for their advice about how to help you.
Is this what you're doing, Elicia?
Yeah, and I think there's really tangible ways. So as my children are going to sleep at night and you're coming up with they want you to create a story, I'm involving them in that and say, hey, what characters do you want in the story? And I'm putting that into ChatGPT and allowing them to see the power of this. I think finding those sort of tangible applications and also educating them, because I totally agree with you, education is going to completely change, and bringing them into that journey as well. And then, professionally, I think there's so many tools to get started. The one I think that's really sort of changed the game for me most recently, I'm using Granola for my note-taking. I think there's a lot of
Granola.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different note-taking AI apps out there. I love this one because it doesn't actually record the audio or the video if you're on a Zoom call. It just transcribes it, and you can type in it just like you were writing normal notes in a meeting. And I'm in a lot of meetings, back to back most of the day. I want to be as present and engaged as I can be, but I also don't want to forget the takeaways and the key points so I can follow up on that. And so that allows me to know I've got this assistant that's listening and transcribing. I can still take my normal notes. At the end of the meeting, I can then click enhance notes, and it will structure those notes, put them into clear dot points, clear actions, next steps. And it will also, there's templates that you can use. Also during a meeting, if for whatever reason you missed a key point, you can click a button that says, what did I just miss? And it will summarize it for you in that meeting. It's just really changed my game because I'm in so many back-to-back meetings every day that it's just
and this is the thing is, but if you my week this week, it feels like you've got Teams coming at you, you've got emails coming through. Generally after 3 p.m, someone's texting wanting to be picked up from the train station or inquiring about what's for dinner and complaining that they don't like what is being proposed for dinner. Like there's just so many channels of that communication that happen at the one time when, to your point, you actually want to be human and be in a meeting and maintain that personal connection. So trying to actually create some order in what is just forever hectic days sounds really
Take out the busy work so you can focus on
the important work.
Yeah.
What are the ethics, Nici, around all of this? Because what are the tips you would give our listeners and viewers around things to consider as they're going through the 31,000 or whatever?
31 and a half. I mean, I checked that a few days
How
ago.
do they know which are the kind of ones that aren't, I don't know, that are safer, I guess, if that's the right word, I'm not sure.
Look, I mean, safety is a really big concern for a lot of people. I actually think a lot of people are overzealous about their concern around safety because we already give away lots and lots of information about ourselves. I just think it's the fact that AI is new, so we feel extra kind of hesitant about how we engage with it. That being said, there are models that don't share data. So if you've got access to Copilot or Claude, by default, they don't share your data. With ChatGPT, you have a setting that you can turn that off. So if you are talking about private things, I always advise turning data sharing off. Personally, I actually turn data sharing on purpose because part of how ChatGPT evolves is taking all of that data that you've shared with it and training the next model on it. And I think as women, it's really important that we have our voices and what we talk about heard within these models. But that's a personal choice. So data, yes, think about that. If you wouldn't post it on a Reddit forum, maybe don't put it into one of these AI tools or think about data sharing. But the ethics behind it, I think, is a whole other piece. So the biggest thing I think for listeners to keep in mind is AI never tells you that you're doing something a bit shonky. And, I have a story about I used to have a process with ChatGPT as it happened where I would put in a few pieces from thought leaders on LinkedIn and I'd say, what resonates with my audience? What do you think I should pull out from this and talk about? I followed that process, normally always checking. One morning, it was my daughter's birthday. I promised that I wouldn't be on my phone for the morning and that I'd make her pancakes. So before she came into my room, I was like, I'll just quickly do my LinkedIn post and then I'll get up and do the pancakes. Did that, whipping up this batter and get this text from a person I really admired in my space who said, "Hey, Nici, I just saw your post on LinkedIn. Would you mind either crediting me or taking it down?" And I died, right? Because I saw this and I went back and read her post and it had pulled very specific examples that she had shared and reposted it. And I felt so betrayed because I thought, why didn't you tell me that I would just plagiarize someone? But the point is, this is just a product that's designed to keep you using it as a user. So it's never going to say, maybe that's not a great idea, right? Or maybe you should have thought about X, Y, Z. Unless you say to it, is this the best? Have I missed anything? So for people, they should always know, again, it's an overfed Labrador. It's going to do all its tricks for you before you even prompt it to do something cool. It's really designed to please you. It's a product that wants you to come back and keep engaging with it. So as a user, making sure that you're always a leader and that you know that you're the boss and that you have to check whatever is happening and make sure it's a good reflection of who you are as a brand. I think that's the number one thing to sort of keep in mind. Now, there's lots and lots of ethics and bias issues around where the data comes from and how it's processed and how these models behave. But as a user, just knowing that it doesn't always have your best intentions at heart.
What are you seeing, Elicia? I guess the final component of our chat, just thinking about finances and money and the world of AI as it relates to that, whether it's personal or investment. What are your reflections?
Yeah, I think if we think about the ethics around this, and I totally agree with Nici that the underlying data is also a problem. I'm sure many of listeners have heard of invisible women, and this is not the first time that we've seen data drive poorer outcomes for women. So you think about crash test dummies. Cars are less safe for women because all the safety tests were done on male bodies and male crash test dummies. And similar with a lot of drugs, they have worse side effects on women because all the dosages were done on largely male-driven clinical trials. And so if you're getting data from the internet and scraping all these sites for a large language model, but that data is primarily driven by male-driven data, you're going to have that output in the bias in the underlying answers that come through. Plus, then from a capital perspective, only 15% of founders globally are women. And so if we're trying to get representation in both how these tools are built and then the underlying data, there's a lot of factors there that are leading to underrepresentation. And so I think this human in the loop and the idea that you should be questioning what's being produced from these tools, and you should be asking whether, and not that any of us are free of bias as well, but just don't take what these tools say as gospel.
Yeah, like I think at a society level, we have lots of different messaging that means that women don't engage with tech as quickly or as early as men do. So we have, straight from school age where we get a huge drop off in STEM involvement from girls from about year 4 onwards. We don't teach them that anybody in that space are women or that there's current things happening. So if you can't see yourself, you can't be that. But then we also teach women to be more risk adverse and more cautious. So, I've trained thousands of people at this point, and I would say that stereotypically it's the women that worry about the ethics around it, so they're more hesitant to use it. It's the women that also worry that it won't represent themselves and they'll be seen as cheating or cutting corners. And I think that reflects this whole kind of we have to do twice as much to be seen as doing, the
twice as smart as standard to get the job. So that
exactly. So there's lots of different messaging that means that women are more hesitant when it comes to new tech and adoption of tech and using AI. And I think, you were saying that women are being seen as visible. That's another component of it. We've built AI that reflects what men talk about. So then women engage with these tools and they don't see themselves in it, and then they further pull back from engaging because it's like, oh, well, this isn't made with me in mind. It's not useful for me. And I think that's a huge risk. So part of why I do what I do is because I don't want us to wake up in 5 years' time and realize we live in the Handmaid's Tale and that we don't have access to power anymore.
Crikey, sister, that is a hell of a call to action there, because none of us want to live in the Handmaid's Tale. No. All right, let's go out on a happy, practical, action-oriented note for our listeners and viewers in terms of a call to action on AI.
I think it's get started. Don't be intimidated by it. Dip your toe in the waters. Don't get left behind. As Nici mentioned, like in 5 years' time, we don't want to be looking back. And I'm very passionate about getting more diversity in entrepreneurship. And I would hate to see the gender gap in AI adoption lead to deteriorating numbers in more female founders leading in to create world-changing companies. We do have some amazing stories in our portfolio in terms of sort of not being able to be what you can't
look
see.
Up Airtree on Copilot or ChatGPT.
And I can. We have Annie who's building Build Club, which is an AI training campus to help people lean into AI. It's a really non-intimidating format. So if you want to learn to build in that space, go to Build Club. Check it out. Female-founded company. We have Siobhan at Rejig. She's building an AI workforce intelligence platform to help the biggest companies in the world think about how they should be harnessing the opportunities of AI and thinking about their workforce in that context. Even Mel from Canva talks about how she does AI walks and talks, where she'll talk and brainstorm live. And Canva's led the way in terms of a very large, successful company integrating AI products into their design workflow very quickly, acquiring companies to sort of scale that growth even quicker. So there are amazing women doing really incredible things out there. And I think just not being intimidated or thinking this is not for you. The world is heading in this direction, and I really would hate for people to get left behind. So it is really really powerful to take out some of that busy work and really allow you to lean into where your superpowers are. So please don't hesitate.
I love it, Elicia. Nici?
Yeah, reiterate that point. Start. Know that you just became the CEO of a limitless company with a limitless amount of employees, and it's up to you to decide what they would do for you. So I often tell people, get out a piece of pen and paper. I know it's old school now that we have AI, but I can't escape it. I'm a big fan of highlighters. Write down all the things that you do, at least on a weekly basis. And if you think that you could explain that to somebody else, put a little star next to it. And if you also hate doing it, or if it doesn't bring you joy, put 2 stars next to it. And that's the thing that you start explaining to one of these models. And you say, hey, I'm this sort of person. This is the thing that you're going to help me with. This is how I usually do it. I want you to do it for me from now on. Because this is our moment in history to, we have these gender gaps. We maybe didn't manage social media completely correctly. We're in the midst of a huge transformation in how we operate, how we spend our time. It actually is a massive opportunity and a challenge, but a huge opportunity for every individual to contribute to what this all looks like. And I think women have a really important place to play. And it's the great equalizer. Women so often have not had money, resources, or time to launch ideas. And in the entrepreneurial space, I've had side hustles for 14 years, by using AI, I actually scaled it to a point where I could step away from my 9 to 5. And I see that as the huge opportunity for so many women, because women have brilliant ideas.
Yes.
They just often don't have access to the things they need to launch. And AI is your thing to launch.
The technological barriers are coming down. So previously, you talked about learning to code. There is underrepresentation. I don't want to generalize too much in women being able to code and get an MVP off the ground and prove that they've got an interesting idea. Now with tools like Cursor, Lovable, you can code something in natural language. That's incredible. That's really breaking down the barriers if you know how to harness it.
So I will finish by saying that Australian Retirement Trust is all about empowering our members and Australians to have a really bright future, that they're awakened, and there's that big blue monster. If you've seen the ad, there's Barb sitting on top of the monster, and we're all about Australians take control of this big lovable monster called superannuation, that you can have this amazing life. And so which is why we wanted you both on the show, because AI is something that we also want women to get on top of, hold the horns, take control, and you drive this thing wherever you want to go so that you can have an awesome retirement. Thank you so much for being on the show. And I'm going to go back after this and then find all of these different tools that you've both spoken about. To our listeners and viewers, I hope you have loved this episode, that you're inspired, that you've got some really practical call to actions. Buy those little stars from Officeworks and start writing your list, and download Granola. Give us a rating wherever you consume your podcasts, and we'll look forward to you joining us again soon.